Picture this. Millions of German soldiers froze to death in the mud and burning trenches of the Second World War. They had no choice in how their biology was extinguished. But the architects of that slaughter, the elite of the High Command, met entirely different fates. In this file, we will examine how 15 of Germany's most notorious generals actually died. Some faced the mechanical wire of the executioner. Some swallowed chemical poison. Some were crushed by the kinetic force of Allied aircraft. But the most horrifying truth is not found in the violent deaths. It is found in the survivors. Watch until General Number 15. Because his final fate is a biological and historical insult that will leave you genuinely infuriated. Let's open the files.acti, The Purge and the Poison. Number 1. Field Marshal Erwin von Witzleben. As a key conspirator in the July 1944 assassination plot against Hitler, Witzleben knew his fate was sealed. But Hitler did not grant him the military dignity of a firing squad. He ordered a state execution designed for maximum, prolonged physical trauma. Witzleben was taken to Plötzensee prison. He was suspended from meat hooks using thin metal cables, often described as piano wire. Because there was no drop to break the neck, this was a process of slow, mechanical asphyxiation. The weight of his own body slowly crushed his airway over the course of several agonizing minutes. Hitler had the entire execution filmed for his personal viewing. Number 2. Field Marshal Erwin Rommel. Known as the Desert Fox, we must first correct a massive historical misconception. Rommel was a general of the regular army, the Wehrmacht, not a member of the Nazi Party. He frequently clashed with the regime. When he was implicated in the July plot, Hitler could not publicly execute his most popular commander. He offered Rommel a biological ultimatum: face a public trial that would destroy his family, or take his own life. On October 14, 1944, Rommel stepped into a staff car. He was handed a capsule of potassium cyanide. Cyanide triggers a condition known as chemical hypoxia. It instantly blocks the cells from absorbing oxygen. Rommel silently suffocated from the inside out within 3 minutes. The regime then staged a massive, hypocritical state funeral, claiming he died of medical complications. Number 3. Field Marshal Gunther von Kluge. Kluge was another brilliant commander caught in the web of the July plot. After the Allied breakout in Normandy, he was dismissed and recalled to Berlin. He knew exactly what mechanical horrors awaited him in the Gestapo prisons. He chose to bypass the executioner. On August 19, 1944, on the road from Paris to Metz, Kluge swallowed a cyanide capsule. He left behind a final letter to Hitler, begging the dictator to end the war and stop the senseless destruction of the German people. His plea was ignored. Number 4. Field Marshal Walter Model. Known as Hitler's fireman, Model was a ruthless defensive specialist. But by April 1945, the fire could no longer be put out. He and 300,000 of his men were completely surrounded by Allied forces in the Ruhr pocket. When an American general requested his surrender, Model refused. He stated, "A German field marshal does not yield." He dissolved his army, handing his men the choice to surrender or go home. Then, on April 21st, he walked alone into the dense woods near Duisburg. He drew his service weapon and carried out his final operational order on himself. Suicide and state executions claimed those who crossed the regime. But for the generals who remained on the battlefield, a completely different, mathematically random executioner was waiting in the sky. Act 2. Kinetic Shock. For the generals who survived the internal purges, the battlefield offered no immunity. When you strip away the medals and the tactical genius, a general is fundamentally just biology. Flesh, bone, and water. And biology cannot argue with kinetic energy. Number 5. General Eduard Dietl. Celebrated as the hero of Narvik for his mountain warfare expertise, Dietl's end did not come in a blaze of combat glory. In June 1944, he boarded a Junkers Ju-52 transport plane. In poor weather, the aircraft slammed directly into an Austrian mountain. Physics does not care about rank. When an aircraft traveling at 150 miles per hour comes to an immediate, violent stop against solid rock, the human body experiences extreme rapid deceleration trauma. The skeletal structure shatters, but the fatal blow is internal. The aorta is frequently sheared right off the heart by the shear G-force. Germany's premier Arctic commander was vaporized in a fraction of a second. Number 6. General Theodor Eich. Eich was a true monster, a fanatical SS commander central to shaping the Dachau concentration camp system. During the Third Battle of Kharkov in 1943, he was flying over the front lines in a light Fieseler Storch reconnaissance plane. Soviet anti-aircraft fire tore through the thin fabric of his plane. The impact and subsequent crash instantly terminated him. His troops recovered his body under heavy fire and buried him in Ukraine. But history has a sense of poetic justice. When the Red Army pushed the Germans back, Soviet bulldozers deliberately drove over his grave, entirely erasing the architect of Dachau from the face of the earth. Number 7. Field Marshal Fedor von Bock. Von Bock once commanded 1.5 million men in the drive toward Moscow. But by May 1945, he was just a dismissed, exhausted old man trying to evacuate in a civilian car. He was spotted by a British fighter plane piloted by a New Zealander. The pilot did not know he was targeting a field marshal. He only saw a vehicle moving in enemy territory. The pilot squeezed the trigger. This is the cold, mathematical reality of air-to-ground strafing. Supersonic rounds strike the thin metal of a vehicle. The kinetic energy transfer is absolute, turning the car door into secondary shrapnel. His wife and stepdaughter were killed instantly. Von Bock survived the initial shockwave, only to succumb to massive physical trauma the next day. Number 8. Field Marshal Friedrich Paulus. Paulus is the ghost of Stalingrad. As his Sixth Army was completely encircled and annihilated, Hitler promoted him to Field Marshal, fully expecting him to commit suicide. Paulus refused. He surrendered. He spent the rest of his life as a Soviet captive, later used for propaganda in East Germany. But his ultimate end was a slow biological prison. He was diagnosed with ALS, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, a fatal motor neuron disease. His brain remained fully aware as his muscles gradually paralyzed over months. He died in 1957, trapped inside his own failing biology, haunted by the hundreds of thousands of men he left in the snow. Number 9. General Johannes Blaskowitz. Blaskowitz is a forensic anomaly. He was the only high-ranking German general to repeatedly and officially draft memorandums protesting the mass executions carried out by the SS in Poland. After the war, he was indicted at Nuremberg. Military historians agree, because of his extensive paper trail of protests, Blaskowitz was almost certainly going to be acquitted. Yet, on February 5, 1948, Blaskowitz broke away from his guards, climbed over the courthouse balcony, and plummeted to his death. Why would a man who is about to be declared innocent execute himself? In forensic psychology, this is known as a moral injury. He protested the slaughter, but he kept wearing the uniform. The legal system was ready to forgive him, but his own neurological system had collapsed under the crushing weight of systemic guilt. For Blaskowitz, gravity was just the final, mechanical tool he used to carry out a sentence he had already passed upon himself. Gravity, high explosives, cyanide. These were the brutal, physical ends for many of the architects. But the most horrifying deaths of the German High Command were the ones that didn't involve violence at all. Act 3. The biological escape. The gallows, the cyanide capsule, and the kinetic shock of the battlefield claimed many of the High Command. But the most disturbing deaths in the German military elite were not violent. They were peaceful. They were the men who successfully executed a biological escape. Number 10. General Otto von Manstein. A feared panzer commander who inflicted massive casualties. He was convicted of manslaughter after the war for his ruthless orders. His sentence? An astonishing 18 months. He was released, became a politician in the West German parliament, and died of natural causes while vacationing in Austria at the age of 81. Number 11. General Joseph Sepp Dietrich. Dietrich was an SS commander responsible for the infamous Malmedy massacre, where unarmed American prisoners of war were systematically gunned down. He was sentenced to 25 years. He served just 10. He died of a heart attack at age 73. But the true historical insult? Over 6,000 people, including thousands of former SS members, proudly attended his funeral. Number 12. General Ferdinand Schorner. His own men called him the Butcher. He enforced discipline through absolute terror, casually ordering the hanging of teenage soldiers who retreated a few yards without permission. As the war collapsed, Schorner did not stay to share the biological fate of his men. And let us correct a ridiculous internet myth. He did not flee in a private jet. Those did not exist for generals in 1945. He abandoned his command, boarded a light Fieseler Storch military plane, and fled in civilian clothes. The man who hanged deserters, deserted. He served a fraction of his sentence, retired to Munich, and died of heart failure at age 81. Number 13. Field Marshal Albert Kesselring. Condemned to death for war crimes in Italy, his sentence was commuted to life, and then he was released entirely in 1952 on the grounds of throat cancer. Miraculously, this terminal cancer allowed him to live another 8 years, becoming the honorary president of veteran associations, before dying of a heart attack at 74. Number 14. Colonel General Hermann Hoth. A ruthless panzer commander on the Eastern Front. Sentenced to 15 years. Paroled early. He spent his comfortable retirement writing books defending the honor of the German army, completely rewriting his own legacy until his biological clock simply ran out at age 85. Number 15. Field Marshal Erich von Manstein. If there is one death that perfectly encapsulates the hypocrisy of history, it is Manstein's. Widely regarded as Germany's greatest strategist, he directed the annihilation of entire Soviet armies and facilitated countless atrocities on the Eastern Front. He was sentenced to 18 years in prison for war crimes. He served exactly 4. Why? Because the Cold War had begun. The West decided they needed his strategic brain to counter the Soviet Union. Manstein achieved the ultimate biological and legal escape. He was officially hired as a senior advisor to rebuild the West German armed forces. He wrote the best-selling memoir, Lost Victories, which successfully shifted all blame onto Hitler and created the enduring myth of the clean Wehrmacht. When Erich von Manstein died on June 9, 1973, it was not from a sniper's bullet, or a hangman's wire, or a cyanide pill. It was a stroke. The peaceful, natural degradation of the cardiovascular system. He was 85 years old. He was buried with full military honors, attended by hundreds of soldiers who saluted a man whose tactical brilliance had filled countless mass graves. Part 4. The Verdict. History is not a courtroom. It is a laboratory. And the results are rarely fair. Millions of 19-year-old boys had no choice in how their biology was extinguished. But the architects who drew the maps? They got to experience arthritis. They got to experience gray hair. They got to die quietly in their sleep. Now, I leave the autopsy to you. What is the crueler sentence? To be strangled by piano wire by the very dictator you swore to serve? Or to witness a justice system that allows the architects of genocide to live to the age of 85, writing books in a warm villa, while a million skeletons rot beneath the earth? Leave your verdict in the comments below. If you want to examine how the military punished the soldiers who didn't have a high rank to protect them, click here for the forensic analysis of discipline by blood, the evolution of punishment. I'll see you in the lab.